Episode 10, The World After World War I. Destruction, Reconstruction, and the Voice of the Lost Generation. Introduction. The Rise of the Lost Generation. World War I, 1914 to 1918, was one of the most devastating events of modern history. With millions of victims and unprecedented destruction, the war not only redrew political borders, but also left deep marks on human psychology, culture, and literature. Millions of soldiers returned with physical and psychological wounds, and the peace promised by the Treaty of Versailles brought not calm, but heightened anger and a sense of injustice. In this atmosphere, a generation of writers and poets emerged who sought to record the reality of war through literature. This generation, later known as the Lost Generation, tried to capture the human dimensions of war, suffering, loneliness, and the void of the post-war years. The term Lost Generation was first coined by Gertrude Stein, the American writer and critic, to describe a group of American and European writers who, after World War I, faced despair, identity crises, and the direct or indirect experience of catastrophe. Unlike earlier generations, they viewed war not only as a military event, but as a cultural and human disaster. Historical and social context of post-war Europe. Europe after World War I faced widespread crises. Economic. Infrastructure and industries were destroyed. Inflation and unemployment surged, and many families struggled to survive. Political. The collapse of empires, redrawn national borders, and unstable governments increased insecurity and identity crises. Social and cultural. Returning soldiers suffered from physical and psychological wounds, while society was unable to respond to their needs. Post-war culture was steeped in disillusionment, emptiness, and the search for meaning. Within this historical context, the Lost Generation used literature to document these crises. They employed innovative techniques, fragmented narratives, harsh imagery, and simple yet powerful language to convey the human experience and cultural consequences of war. Chapter 1. The Return of the Soldiers. Lost Heroes. Physical wounds. Hundreds of thousands returned with amputated limbs, blindness, or mustard gas injuries. In France, the term men patched together became common. Psychological wounds. Thousands suffered from shell shock, trembling hands, endless nightmares, terror at loud noises, wounds no doctor of the time could heal. Unemployment and homelessness. Many had lost their homes and jobs. Lines of jobless veterans in London and Berlin became everyday scenes. A newspaper report of the time. He fought for his country. Now, with a cane in hand and an empty stomach, he stands in the street, waiting in hope for work. Chapter 2. Families among the ruins. Women. During the war, they entered hospitals and factories. After the war, they were unwilling to return home. This marked the beginning of a new wave of the women's suffrage movement. The missing. The Red Cross established special offices to search for missing persons. Every day, thousands of letters were written. Has anyone heard of? Reconstruction. Families lived in half-ruined cities. Homes were propped up with charred bricks and temporary wooden boards. Memoir of a Belgian mother. Every morning I go to the train station. I look at every soldier who gets off. Perhaps one day, my son will be among them. Chapter 3. Children. A generation amid the ruins. Millions of children lost their parents. Orphanages were filled with the war's youngest victims. Malnutrition, poverty, and disease threatened their lives, while the Spanish flu claimed thousands more. Yet children were the first to bring back hope, playing among the ruins, studying with torn notebooks, showing the world that the future could still be rebuilt. Chapter 4. A new political map, a changing world. The empires of the Ottomans, Austro-Hungarians, and Tsarist Russia collapsed. New nations like Poland, Czechoslovakia, and Yugoslavia were born. The League of Nations was formed to prevent future wars. But without the US, and with weak enforcement, it proved ineffective. The peace signed at Versailles was not the end of war, but the beginning of new instability. German resentment, national discontent, and rising revolutions sowed the seeds of another war. Chapter 5. Literature and Art. The Voice of the Lost Generation. War poets Wilfred Owen and Siegfried Sassoon wrote bitter, realistic poetry about mud, blood, and the futility of war. Lost generation writers Ernest Hemingway, Eric Maria Remarque, and F. Scott Fitzgerald captured a generation that had lost everything on the battlefields and could no longer find meaning in life. Artists, movements such as Dadaism and Surrealism were born from despair. Otto Dix's paintings revealed the brutal face of war. Music and cinema. Jazz became a sound of hope and escape. Silent films about the war brought both tears and protest from audiences. The Lost Generation. Historical and literary analysis. Biographies and key works of the Lost Generation. 1. Wilfred Owen, 1893 to 1918. Wilfred Owen, an English poet and soldier, was a direct witness to the horrors of trenches, mustard gas, and the death of comrades. He recorded the bitter reality of war in his poetry, rejecting the glamour of patriotism and heroism. While recovering from shell shock in a hospital, he wrote poems that later became some of the most powerful anti-war works. His most famous line, Dulce et decorum est, pro patria mori, sweet and fitting it is to die for one's country, was used with biting irony to expose the falsehood of patriotic glorification. Owen was killed in November 1918, just 1 week before the armistice, giving his words unique historical weight. His works remain central to understanding the psychological impact of war on soldiers. Number 2. Siegfried Sassoon, 1886 to 1967. Sassoon, an English officer and poet, was one of the rare dissenting voices within the army. He witnessed the waste of human lives and the indifference of bureaucracy, issuing a declaration calling the war a meaningless massacre. The declaration was read in the British Parliament, causing uproar. His poetry combined realism with bitter irony, making the human and military experience of war tangible to civilians. He urged the next generation to rethink traditional values and patriotic slogans of courage. 3. F. Scott Fitzgerald. Although Fitzgerald did not directly fight in the trenches, he captured the spirit and culture of the post-war era in novels such as The Great Gatsby. He portrayed the 1920s with all its glitter, parties, jazz, cocktails, yet beneath the surface, he revealed the emptiness and disillusionment of a generation searching for meaning after the war. Literary analysis and themes. The Lost Generation developed an innovative style marked by fragmented narratives, brutal imagery, and simple yet powerful language to convey post-war experience. Common themes included disillusionment, loss of faith in traditional values and ideals. Trauma, physical and psychological scars of war, alienation and loneliness, a sense of separation from society, search for identity, the struggle to find meaning in a shattered world, critique of heroism and patriotism, a raw and unglamorous portrayal of war. Their works were more than literature. They were living testimonies of the human experience during and after war. Cultural and social impact. The works of the lost generation influenced modern literature, cinema, art, and the psychology of war. They demonstrated that literature could serve as a tool of social and cultural critique, prompting later generations to reflect on the true cost of war and to challenge patriotic slogans. Conclusion. The lost generation reminds us that war does not only take place on the battlefield, it also wages war on the human soul and psyche. Their works stand as living testimonies of suffering, despair, and human resilience, inspiring later generations to better understand history, culture, and modern literature. Preview of Episode 11. In Episode 11, we will explore a hypothetical scenario. What if World War I had never happened? We will examine its possible effects on politics, culture, economics, and world history, attempting to reconstruct the alternate path history might have taken. Don't miss it. Like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss Episode 11.